Well, we might as well move on to the next one because we did anyway. I want to introduce something else into the discussion and that picks up on some of the earlier discussion we've had around brain development, and that is the concept of self-regulation. Okay? It's kind of an underlying concept to a whole array of skills, abilities, development, and learning that happens. And at that core of that is the idea of how we manage stress or how we manage challenge in new situations. Stress is not a bad thing. In fact, without stress of any kind, we'd all still be in bed probably. Stress is, we need some upregulation and some excitement and going. We need to be aroused. But how we recover and how we manage that is at the core of self-regulation. Okay, the earlier study 3 talked about how self-regulation is how we become engaged and excited and how we respond to new ideas, challenge, opportunities, and frustrations, and that it's grounded in our biology of arousal and recovery states. Now, yes, and this is come from, it doesn't show up as well on the big screen, but I'll talk you through it. It comes from work of many over the last 40 years thinking about different states of development. And right now, Stuart Shanker uses this a lot to talk about self-regulation and optimal state. Because self-regulation isn't all one thing. We talk about optimal self-regulation as being calmly focused and alert, or calm, alert, and learning, different ways of saying it. And that's the point where you are engaged, alert, intent, and can take in new information or can respond to your environment, okay? After lunch isn't the best time for that because for all kinds of reasons, it's kind of a sleepy time. But if you think about it, when do you learn best? When are you best equipped to deal with a challenge or a new situation or take in new information? It's when you're wide awake, but not overly hyper, right? You're wide awake. Nothing is particularly negatively stressing you out, but you are alert. You are definitely wide awake. Then we have, so that's right in the middle. Have I got this? I'm trying to find, there it is. Then we have, beyond calmly focused and alert, we have hyper alert. And this is when we're on edge. And sometimes we need to be hyper alert. Sometimes we need to be really kind of have a little bit of adrenaline going for it. And sometimes for safety we need to. Sometimes we're taking risks and we need to. We're climbing a mountain, we're skiing, we're somewhere where we need to be really alert so that we're very aware of our environment. And then when we get beyond that to the next stage, when we're overly hyper, we flood. Flip the lid, as Joan talked about last night, Joan Durant talked about last night. We flip the lid, and young children technically have meltdowns. They temper tantrum. They howl, they scream, they kick. Sometimes we do that too, but we try to keep that a little under control. But that's the flooding at the extreme end. Yes? Sorry? Flooding, yeah. I'm trying to get, there it is. That's flooding. Trying to get this challenged with this, but it seems to be working out. This is flooding at the far end, and this is when we've lost it. Okay? Hyper alert, we wouldn't want to stay there all the time. We wear ourselves out when we stay there all the time, but sometimes it's a good idea. When you live under situations of high negative stress, toxic stress, as we heard about this morning, and you're here most of the time, it has a wear and tear on the body that is not good, and that for young children carries forward and has a negative impact on brain and other biological development. Calmly focused and alert is like you've had a good shot of caffeine in the morning and you're up for things, but you're able to take in information, but you're not overly alert. Hypo alert is where many of us may be now because we've had a lunch and it's the middle of the day and the room may be a little warm and we're relaxed. You want to be hypo alert some of the time. Hypo alert is also the state that people typically move into after a really good massage or after in meditation. Deep breathing, yoga, calms us down, okay? Drowsy, we kind of tune out. We start to tune out in here. And then asleep, okay? And asleep is good for 8 or 9 or 10 hours a night, but if you're sleeping 14, 15, 16 hours, that could be a problem, okay? Or falling asleep at times where you need to be alert. So what happens is as we upregulate and go to flooding, typically what happens is kids will play themselves out till they fall asleep, okay? This is also useful to think about in helping kids. I'm a little off topic, but I'll get back on track in a moment. Helping kids go to sleep who are having difficulties is, instead of trying to go from up here, hyper alert, where you've been running around playing hide and seek or something, right to sleep, is to think about how to move kids down these stages to get them to sleep. Baths, stories that may not be real exciting, but they're calm stories with a voice, etc., etc. And for kids who have trouble falling asleep, taking them down through these stages can be helpful. So we've got this arousal and recovery continuum that underlies self-regulation, okay? And this is, I think, is really important to think about in terms of play. Okay, I want to connect this to play because I want to make the argument that all of those kinds of play, all the kinds of why we play, a lot of it helps children acquire their own capacity for optimal self-regulation. That rough and tumble play, arousal and recovery, not going too far and hurting, knowing when to come back, boundaries in the play, the sense of narrative, staying focused, alert, and intent in what the game is, but not getting too hyper in it, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we can see that there's a lot of work recently that talks about how pretend play is very important for self-regulation, helps with perspective taking and all the things I've talked about. But I think it actually goes across all of those areas of play, can be very helpful in supporting children and their management of the energy in this arousal and recovery continuum. So we can think of self-regulation with arousal and recovery in the middle, and then we can think as the biological basis, and then we can think about it in 3 different spheres and a whole lot of different capacities and skills and learnings in there that are involved. So we can think about emotional regulation, where children learn how to modulate strong negative emotions and experience positive emotions. And there's lots of opportunities for that in play. We can think about a regulation of attention. Okay, and much of this happens, as we've talked about in the last couple, up in the prefrontal cortex, the front of the brain, and the connections with that limbic section of the brain, talking back and forth. Okay? And there are 2 periods of brain development where those connections are particularly under active development. One is in the preschool period, 3 to 5-year-old, and the other is in the adolescent brain, where those connections are under active development. And then finally, the regulation of behavior, how we get along with others, how we can take, and this is not just being nice or following through on external expectations, on being polite or those sorts of things. This is about being able to understand one's own feelings and emotions and being able to manage them accordingly, and to be able to think about how you're feeling. Okay, so taking the perspective of others. And if you look across this whole array of different skills and abilities that are here, many of them fall under what educators and psychologists sometimes call executive functions. Okay, and or other people call them the soft skills. James Heckman calls them soft skills. There are also, much of this is very much involved with what some people are calling social-emotional learning. Okay? I make the argument that good play opportunities, an array of play opportunities, provide children the practice and experiences they need for optimal self-regulation across all of those spheres. And I want to take you back to a slide that Carrie showed you yesterday, because I think it's really telling. And this is from the British study from out of the UK, Effective Provision of Preschool Education, longitudinal study that tracked kids in a whole variety of different preschool environments, okay? And this, as you remember hearing about yesterday, they looked at low, those are the red, low quality, medium, average quality, and high quality. Now, keep in mind, none of them were really awful. None of them were unsafe preschool settings. Some of them were a bit custodial in nature and not much more, but none of them were really awful, okay? And we see that the real impact of quality was on self-regulation. And in this study, pro-social behavior, okay, children's understanding of what was expected, when to say please and thank you, when to use kind of scripted, kinds of statements because it was expected, and that sort of thing. There was not much difference in those kinds of things, the pro-social, externally rewarded kinds of behaviors according to the quality at age 11, but there was huge difference in quality in terms of self-regulation, okay? And if we analyze what goes on inside of those programs, we find that the opportunities for self-regulation correlate with opportunities for extended play. Okay, children, opportunities for self-regulation include things like opportunities to solve conflicts, opportunities to take the perspective of others, opportunities to plan, et cetera, et cetera. You can see the relationship with play. And when those things are there, and the quality is high, we see that self-regulation at age 11 is much higher. Okay? So this does seem to matter.